Welcome to Audible Sportscast, your home for all things sports. Welcome back to another episode, everybody. We have Cody and Jeff here today, and before we get right into it, next week is the draft. We're not sure where or how yet, but we will be doing some during live draft feeds of some sort, whether that's Facebook Live, TikTok, Instagram, somewhere we will be live streaming. We're trying to figure that out right now, but just a heads up to look for something. So, check our social medias are always linked down below, so keep an eye out for something once we know what we're doing, but let's just get right into it. This week, we saw the biggest contract ever to be given to an NFL player. I mean, we say that probably almost every year at this point, but Jalen Hurts just got himself a fancy, fresh new contract with the Eagles after losing in the Super Bowl. And now he is set to become the highest paid player in NFL history with an average of around $51 million. It's not going to be that every year, but pretty much that's what it's going to be around. And so let's just start with this question right now. What does this mean for the Eagles? In reality, I think this isn't that bad of a deal when looking at the financials. Yes, it is a hefty contract, pretty good guaranteed money, but looking at some of the numbers I found, next year he's only getting $6 million because the contract doesn't get put into place quite yet. 2024, 13, 2025, 21 million, 2026, 31. Now you might be saying, so that means this is getting backed up in a little bit, but even after the set playing years are done, there's come some stuff in there to where they'll be pretty much paying him more than the years he's playing, kind of like the way the Odell contract set up, where I think they're going to be paying him three years after the contract's done. It's very, I as an economics major, I wish I understood these NFL contracts a little bit more, but it's just kind of crazy what they're doing. But I bring this question kind of to you. Do you think this is a pretty good deal for the Eagles?
I'm not completely up on all the ends of it, but I think it shows their commitment to him.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, he's only getting $6 million next year.
Yeah, partially because it doesn't,
Right, yeah. But could they be hurting in other positions because of the contract in the future? Maybe, but I think he might be one of those quarterbacks that might take a little hit on his contract just to get some more talent, need be, in the future.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when Mahomes signed his super high, $500 million contract, everyone was thinking, oh, the Chiefs are done for. They're going to have to, let go of everybody. And for a little bit, they kind of were in some cap situations, but he's restructuring it every single year. Other guys are kind of, taking team contracts. I mean, other than Tyreek Hill, he got traded once his kind of contract was due to be up. But he's kind of the same way. This major contract that he just restructures it every year. And I mean, nowadays when NFL players restructure their contracts, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not getting the money they're owed. With some of these salary cap gymnastics we're seeing, I 100% don't remember how it goes exactly, but you transfer some of that money into signing bonuses, and those signing bonuses don't get put into the salary cap. So for the most part, restructures, you're still getting the money you're owed. It's just given to you in different ways so it doesn't take over the salary cap, which you can say is kind of cheating the system. And I know team like the Saints the last 4 years have been doing it. I don't, it's definitely something I think that is interesting when looking at the way NFL teams do salary cap gymnastics nowadays. But
yeah, I mean, obviously I don't like Tom Brady, but it'd be very smart for all the future QBs to follow in his footsteps.
Oh yeah.
Not playing ability, but him giving up money and wanting a good team to surround him, not just wanting the money and the big contract.
Oh yeah, I mean he was always one of the highest paid quarterbacks, but from my recollection, he was never the highest paid quarterback. And obviously, for the majority of his playing time, contracts weren't anywhere near what they are today. At least when you talk about, I mean, I guess every position, but especially quarterback contracts. But yeah, I mean, I feel like every year for a little while he was taking pay cuts, and
he did.
And even I think when he was in Tampa, he was making, I want to say around $25 million a year. Don't quote me on that. And you know that was a free agent contract, so he could have went anywhere, gotten big bucks, and he obviously chose Tampa because you know they were in the best position. But yeah, like you know he didn't take the big money, and sometimes it is hard for you're giving a young player like the big contracts. Your agent's going to be pushing for you to get as much money as you can, and so. But it's hard to. I feel like it is kind of hard, probably, for them to kind of find that middle ground, especially the players who maybe either know or think they might not get a second chance at a big contract like this, or whatever they do get. So, but I think the way it's structured with the Eagles, it's great. And not only that, but they got it done before a lot of these other big name quarterbacks who could potentially get new contracts this offseason. I mean, Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, that's the name. Yeah, it's the name of the game now.
Oh yeah, I mean I remember there's always years where it's like who's going to get the big contract first, because that sets the stone for at least the next pretty much calendar year. Especially a guy like Jalen Hurts, where it's like he's a really good player. It's not like a Daniel Jones where it's like, however well he played, he's not on the same level as Jalen Hurts or really any of the other players, I would say, who are up for new contracts this offseason, or at least who are still of the quarterbacks when you look at Lamar, Justin Herbert, or Joe Burrow.
I can make a very not popular opinion. I think Daniel Jones can make his money's worth.
Oh yeah, easily.
And
he
prove
can.
his worth with that money.
I mean,
but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean he can show that he's worth.
He did well last year. Yeah.
Would you say he did well enough to earn $40 million a year?
No.
Yeah,
but
that's
he
the
also
problem.
doesn't have the best receivers.
No,
he does now. Or
they could still get better. That's better than last year. And
one was a largely overpaid receiver that caught like a pass a game if he was lucky.
I'm gonna guess
all the others, Kenny, and then all the rest were hurt.
Yeah, I mean they went out. They got who they get. They got Paris Campbell from the Colts. Darren Waller. That's a big addition, and I think they could still easily do a little bit more in the draft. Maybe not spend a first round pick on that, depending on what they think they need in other positions. But they easily could anywhere in the first 2 or 3 rounds. Go wide receiver and continue to add, because you can, especially if you're going to have a guy like Daniel Jones on the super high contract, you can never have too many weapons, which is interesting. For now, the Eagles, I wouldn't say they have holes, but they have maybe a couple more positions I could see them going, because the Eagles, kind of going back to the Eagles and kind of where they're at, it is a pretty old roster when looking at it. They brought guys like Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, Darius Slay, James Bradbury, a lot of these older guys back for kind of like one more run with this kind of group. But at the same time, they have 2 first-round picks this year. They have, I'm sure, depending on who's there at 10, they could maybe even trade back and get more picks for another couple years. Like, I think they're in a good position where they've drafted pretty well the last couple years, gotten some good rotation, good depth, that as they start to lose these older guys, they have guys to step in and will continue to bring in guys to step in. And now that you have Jalen Hurts signed for a long-term contract, if he still continues to play well, I mean, you can argue that if he didn't get hurt, he probably could have won MVP, depending on how well he played in those games he missed. I mean, it would have been hard. Mahomes had a really great kind of end of the year. But, I mean, it was between those two, if anything, if he doesn't get hurt. If he continues to play on that same level, guys are going to start wanting to come play with him. And you'll see, especially if they make it on another long run, players start to, take pay cuts to come play with them. We saw that in Tampa Bay. When Brady was there, we saw a bunch of old veterans that were like, okay, this is maybe my last chance to get a ring, taking pay cuts to play for that team. Half the defense, like Ndamukong Suh, Jason Pierre-Paul, like just old veterans who still could play at a good level, but they either could, they weren't making what they could on the open market. So we could see that happen in Philly. It'd be interesting to see kind of how the NFC dynamics go with that, but I think they're they have a pretty good window now, and then even with kind of the assets they have, they can continue because they have.
Go ahead. I
was going to say they have most of their, at least when looking at some of their key assets now, they have them signed under contract for a while. I mean, A.J. Brown got himself a fancy new contract when they traded for him. I mean, obviously now Hurts. Devonta Smith, I think, still has 2 years if they fifth-year option him. So, actually, no, I think 3. I can't count. But, there's a handful of guys that, are playing at pretty good levels that they still have around. I mean, they lost Andre Dillard, their left tackle, but they have, probably one of the best interior offensive lines in the game. Lane Johnson who knows how much longer Lane Johnson will play, but I'm sure he still has at least a year or two left in the tank, depending on how. I know he had some, ankle issues, I think it was, and he was pretty much, I don't know if it was an ankle or what, but he was playing on pretty much an injured leg, so I guess it depends how his rehab and everything goes this offseason and how much he has left in the tank, but I think that team is in a perfect spot right now.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
I mean, it is interesting now seeing the NFC East as a total, because I think all of those teams either have gotten better this offseason or show that they could be good for a good chunk of time down the road. I mean, Washington, it's still TBD on Sam Howell, but they seem to like him. So, but then again, Ron Rivera is still their head coach, and as much as I love him, I don't know if he's what they need to take it to the next level. We'll see, but I think
he's not.
He's not.
Yeah, he took a team to the Super Bowl, but
and then couldn't finish.
Yeah.
He has won a Super Bowl in his NFL career, though, but he didn't play in it. 85 Bears. I think he was on the injured reserve that year. He was, I think, Singletary's backup, if I remember right. I don't know. Sometimes things are hard to remember, but it's. I mean, we mentioned them, that there's other quarterbacks that could, and I guess with Lamar maybe should get new contracts, depending on how Lamar wants to play out this whole thing. But Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow are 3 quarterbacks who are eligible to get new contracts, and you can say should get similar type of contracts. Of those 3 guys, if not all of them, or 1 or 2 of them, how many of them do you think will, or at least should, get a better or a higher average, I'll say, paid contract in compared to Hurts?
2 of them, I would say Burrow, and Lawrence is up for 1 too, right? You said?
No, Justin Herbert, Lamar, and Burrow. Lawrence still has, I believe, next offseason he will be eligible.
Yeah, he'll be coming up on 1, and they'll probably be in talks for 1.
Oh, yeah, especially if they take the next step, that team.
Yeah, I want to bring his name up because he's one of the few quarterbacks that will be okay not getting a 1-up contract bigger than Hurts. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
He's one of those quarterbacks that wants a good team, and Burrow I think could too, but I don't think he's gonna definitely beat Hurts' contract.
Oh, yeah.
And both of those are deserving as of right now. No, I'm pretty convinced on Trevor Lawrence, but we'll see how this season goes. Obviously, Burrow. Herbert, I don't know.
Yeah, Herbert's a tough one.
It may be controversial to say that I don't think he's proven himself, to be honest. Yeah, you can say his receivers are always hurt, but I don't know. Every time Patrick Mahomes and him play, like, Mahomes just looks 10 times better.
I mean, they've had good battles in the past. I mean, I think it was Justin Herbert's first start as an NFL quarterback when Tyrod Taylor, his lung got punctured and Herbert had to come in. He had a really great game, and it does seem like there are a couple things that Herbert does that, like, dang, like, kind of what were you thinking type plays. But it's kind of how the Chargers have been since the mid to late Rivers era. Like, just consistency. They've never been consistent, whether that's because of injuries, play, whatever. I mean, there was one year that the Chargers had the number one defense, but they had the number one offense, the number one defense, but the dead last special teams that didn't make the playoffs.
One of the best offenses we've seen in a long time, and they still didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, so it's almost like the Charger way is just to be inconsistent enough to where you give your fans hope. Well, whatever fans they have. I mean, it's kind of the running joke that Chargers don't have fans since they relocated to LA. But it's just kind of, that's how it is, inconsistencies. And I feel like every year we say, oh, yeah, this is the Chargers' year to, like, go on a long, deep playoff run. And is part of that some of it injuries? I mean, I feel like they're one of the more injured teams every year. But at the same time, everybody has to play through some type of adversity. I mean, people always complain about, like, say the NBA playoffs. Like, oh, this so-and-so team should have won, but they got hurt. It's part of the game. Play with adversity. Yeah, it's one thing when a quarterback gets hurt, because in the NFL that's your team, but we still seen quarterbacks get hurt, and teams are good enough to where they play through adversity. Look at the Eagles in 2018. That's probably the best example. Carson Wentz is playing on an MVP type year, gets hurt. Nick Foles, we all know the Philly play. I don't need to say anything else. So it's like,
I honestly still don't see it or know how he carried that team the rest of the way.
He almost did it the next year if it wasn't for an Alshon Jeffrey drop that turned into an interception against the Saints in the playoffs the next year when they beat the Bears, double doink.
Dang, that's right.
Yeah, it's like Nick Foles was just that guy there. It's just kind of going back to the Chargers, it's like just inconsistencies. How much is that to blame for coaching? How much is that to blame on injuries? How much of that is just Herbert isn't the guy? It's hard to really tell. I think Herbert is talented, and when you have a talented quarterback, especially one who helps bring in revenue, when you look at, like, I'm sure Justin Herbert's jersey sales are up there with some of the other top players in the league, if I had to guess. So, like, that.
Speaking of jerseys.
Well, you buy a jersey?
No, I have the signed Phillip Rivers and signed Antonio Gates.
Oh, that's.
And I wouldn't mind giving those away sometime.
Hey, maybe if we get maybe we'll set a milestone. If we get X amount of followers on anything, we'll maybe have a giveaway. So if you're listening, keep an eye on that and tell people to follow. But
going off the Chargers jersey point,
especially if you're a Chargers fan, like, those are cool jerseys to have.
I don't know how many of those exist, but
I mean, enough to
especially since they left San Diego.
Yeah, but even if you're still a San Diego fan, that, I don't know what else is. Oh, the Padres are in San Diego, so it's not. They didn't lose everything. Yeah, Chargers just inconsistent. I don't know, but whenever you have a talented quarterback like a Herbert, no matter how much you think he is at a certain level or not, you kind of have to pay him. That's kind of how it goes nowadays, because if you let him go, you're going to lose even more fans than you don't already have.
They're not going to let him go. That's not what I was saying.
Well, no, but if
he's still going to get paid big.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
And I'd say he's deserving of it because he still is a top 5 quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
And will be for a while.
And that's just how it goes when you have a quarterback who either makes plays for you, is good, or your team will be much worse off without him. I mean, Jared Goff was at one time one of the highest paid quarterbacks because he helped lead the team to the Super Bowl. It's just kind of how it goes. I mean, even Jay Cutler, I think at one time was like top 2 paid highest quarterback. I believe him, Andrew Luck, and Colin Kaepernick all got new contracts the exact same offseason, and all 3 of them are kind of the highest paid quarterbacks that year.
Which Cutler was deserving.
For the most part, being a Cutler fan, I can say, I think he was deserving.
Well, he's just one of those overhated quarterbacks because he was successful with a shitty franchise.
You calling the Chicago Bears a shitty franchise? You just broke my heart.
Crappy franchise.
Changing the word you think makes it any better when it means the same thing?
No, you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's
these like last 20 years.
Yeah.
30 years.
Yeah, they've had their last playoff win was 2010, and
they've had a couple good seasons, and guess who that was with? Him. And one with Mitch.
Yeah, Matt for everyone who hates Matt Nagy did take him to the playoffs twice, even though one of those was the 7th seed, and I don't want to get into it. I don't like Matt Nagy, but there is one other quarterback though that we haven't mentioned.
Yeah, I blinked on him.
Lamar Jackson is, I mean, he can sign a contract really with anybody, and some of the debate has always been fully guaranteed contract or not. Well, now with this new Jalen Hurts contract, we kind of have an idea of what to expect from a Lamar Jackson contract. Whether that's a little bit more, a little bit less, it's going to be around that same range. And so I think this is I don't remember what the numbers that kind of were rumored to be around that the Ravens did offer him, but no matter what those numbers were, this is a good kind of just stone to set for a contract with Lamar Jackson, whether that's with the Ravens, which who knows? I keep thinking it will be, but I don't know what to think anymore. But
the Ravens offered Lamar a $200 million contract.
I believe it was in a shorter term deal too. When I don't remember. I mean, obviously what we hear is what we, people want us to hear.
Find it. Yeah.
So it's hard to take anything with complete seriousness because all these things are happening behind closed doors. I mean, it's kind of like what we're going through right now with the draft. All this stuff all of a sudden is coming out about C.J. Stroud, and we'll talk about this more next week for the draft, but like, who's letting that out? Like, is it a team that wants him to fall to them? Is it, we don't. This is the time of year where you trust very little that comes out unless it's literally your team's Twitter coming out and being like, hey, we signed this guy. That's literally this time of year the only thing you really should be believing, unless like an owner or something. Like, very few like insiders should be completely trusted. Now, yes, they do have good information, but where they're getting their information from.
TikTok guy, he's talking to you.
But I don't know what to expect with the Lamar contract. I know we've talked about it quite a bit this offseason, and I'm sure we still will. I don't think
he's not a better quarterback than Hurts. I'll say that.
I think he is a good quarterback.
No, I'm saying he's not better than Hurts. I don't think. A scrambler, yes. But Hurts arguably might be a better scrambler. I don't know.
He's definitely
he's more
on the physical side. That's for sure.
Yeah. And he's definitely, I know he got hurt, few games last year?
I believe he missed 4 games, if I want to say, with a shoulder injury.
But he's back.
Yeah. And he did have surgery this offseason, I believe, on his ankle. I don't know. I think I might just be going to ankle for every injury I don't know about, but
it might be with a mobile quarterback.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see Lamar Jackson in an offense like what Jalen Hurts had this season, when you have, 2 arguably wide receiver ones, offensive line that Lamar hasn't had since his MVP year, and just a good overall all around team. I feel like Lamar Jackson hasn't really been able to have that. I mean, you can say whether you think they have or haven't gotten him the wide receivers that he needs to succeed. I mean, he has Mark Andrews, obviously, but you can't throw it to Mark Andrews every single play. Hollywood Brown didn't work out, whether that was because Lamar couldn't get him the ball or he dropped really good balls. I mean, probably a mixture of both there. Could you it's hard to compare. I don't know. It would be interesting to see Lamar in a different situation, because for a while they didn't try pass. They were the number 1 rushing team for 2 straight years. And
I retract what I said. They're actually pretty comparable.
I think so.
I would honestly trust Lamar to throw it deep over Hurts, to be honest. I know Lamar has has an accuracy problem, especially with throwing it deep, but how much is that to blame on receivers?
Yeah, I mean,
he definitely has more power.
They both are very. I mean, when I say comparable, I don't think they're the same player, but
That's not what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying, because I was about to say that they're comparable, but they're just good quarterbacks. I'd say they're probably. I don't know if they're maybe really close to together in the top, if I were to rank them all together, but two very good quarterbacks in, I would say, different situations. Obviously, when you look at one got a contract with their team right away, but I just want to see Lamar in a different situation at this point, because obviously it wasn't where it's.
Where's he?
I don't know. I don't think we will know until after the draft, where we see what teams did get a quarterback or didn't get a quarterback, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. What the Jets need to do is just bail on Aaron and go with Lamar.
I agree. That could be I mean, if we're talking about weapons, Jets have what? I mean, they traded Elijah Moore, but Garrett Wilson, Cody Davis, Cody Davis. Still,
Corey.
Oh, it is Corey. God, dang it. He's still a pretty decent wide receiver. They got Mecole Hardman, a speed demon. They have 2 good tight ends in Tyler Conklin and CJ Uzomah. And then, hey, Lamar knows how to run it. They got a pretty good running back in Breece Hall in the backfield too. So it's that's a pretty good that's some pretty good weapons on top of one of the best defenses in the league. I just want to see Lamar in a different situation, whether that is in New York, which I think he could succeed. I think it doesn't take much to be a quarterback in that system that they'll be able to succeed, as long as you can just do a little bit more than what they had last year, and you're a playoff team. I keep saying Indy, but I think now they're in a pretty good position with supposed rumors out that they'll be able to get a good quarterback in this draft. Who knows? We won't know for another week, but that could be another team. Might be the only 2 teams, and one of those is dependent on a draft. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I don't think the Colts have any chance of getting Lamar.
I think the only way that happens is if still quarterbacks still go 1-2, and a team trades up to 3, and they don't value the other guys, and then at that point you have to go, best position available, and then you don't have to give the number 4 overall pick to the Ravens. Then you can just be like, all right, you can take our, But then again, they could be in a situation where then they get screwed because Ravens could match the offer and then they have to scramble like they have been the last couple years since Luck retired. Who knows? I just hope they get a quarterback. Lamar gets to go to a nice fancy team. And the NFL just continues to be the NFL, I guess. We'll see how it goes. I mean, we're literally...
Imagine if the Reds or the Commanders still had the old Redskins uniforms. Lamar would look sick in that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they still kind of have a... I mean, yeah, they're not the same, but they still kind of have some of that blend, but yeah, some of those...
I think they look gross.
I mean, who knows? I mean, if they get a new owner, they could... I mean, when they get the new owner, that's still kind of being figured out, but there will be a new owner for the Washington Commanders at some point in the next year. They could still change the team name. I doubt that maybe happens because that's more money to push aside when they already need a new stadium and all that, but who knows? They could always bring some of those old jerseys back. I mean, that team potentially dates back to the 20s, if you believe that the Commanders were bought by... There is a interesting line of things that go, but potentially one time the team that is now the Washington Commanders was in Duluth, Minnesota. But that's a big question mark that most of the time the NFL does not consider. Maybe that's a story for another day. Maybe a whole episode about that kind of story. But that's really all we have for you today. Just keep an eye, look out for what we're going to do during the draft. We will be doing something. But hey, keep an eye on lookout for that. NBA playoffs are going on. If you care about the NBA playoffs, keep watching them. And baseball, it's starting to get into full swing, pun intended. So just keep watching sports and have a good one, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Audible Sportscast, your home for all things sports.